Hello guys, my name is King Jupiter and you can see my map here to the left. And hopefully, yes, you can see me also. I am looking at the recording now. Okay, so I've been wanting to do this recording for a long time, but I've been putting it off because honestly it takes a little bit more work than just playing a game. But I felt like it was kind of worth doing. I want to make a video explaining all these places. But first, a couple disclaimers, and that's not the video we're doing today. Today we're going to recap what my party has done. So, hey, friends who are in my game right now, if you forget what's happened, I'm going to try to recap it as best I can. It may take more than one video, and honestly, since I pulled out the DM journal, which is, by the way, for those watching, a Lectrum journal, I would recommend Lectrum. I don't know, I like it, build quality-wise. I've lost my train of thought. Plowing forward. Okay, so this is my map. It's called the Northern Highlands, as you can see. This is all hand-drawn, not by me. I penciled, I would say, a fair amount of this, and then my girlfriend, Michelle, who I've mentioned on the channel, penned it. She's an excellent artist. I am not. I have ideas, but I can't draw the ideas very well. Anyway, I digress. Here is my world. Here is the key. So, party. Here's where we pick it up. Well, one disclaimer real quick. This Citadel Felbar, Iron Slag, some of this stuff on this map is not my own idea. These names, Bardright Inn, Womford, they are actually from Faerun, from the Wizards of the Coast's setting. I feel a little shitty for that, because honestly, when I was in college making this map, I've been doing the whole map for years. There's a lot of maps and a huge one on my wall upstairs. When I was doing these maps, I just didn't have as much time, and honestly, it was kind of wearing on me. I'd been making these maps and thinking of this world for years, and I didn't really want to do it any longer if I didn't have someone to play with. But I now have I have players. I have a bunch of players. So hey, it worked out. So let's start out. So here, let me get the pen so that you in the video can see it, in case you can't see my cursor. Hey, right over here. Yeah. This is a place called Evertide. I did come up with this place, Evertide. The party started out just north of it. Here are the Boar Woods. The party started out kind of right here in a little village called Hamlet. And you may recognize Hamlet if you've seen Matt Colville's video. He brings it up as a good place for a starting adventure, and that's what I thought too. So I got Hamlet, and I decided I was going to run like the beginning of the adventure there. We pick up there, and the party, I ripped this right off of Matt Colville, who's linked in the description below. The party they wake up in a tavern. I'm more on that later. But they wake up in a tavern, and the local blacksmith bursts through the doors and says, "They got my daughter." And the short and the long is goblins have taken his daughter somewhere into the Boar Woods to sacrifice her to whatever god that they worship. So the party, being altruistic, sits there and does nothing until until I have to poke and prod them a little bit to go ahead and actually do the thing that I had set out in front of them, which you may think is a little forced, but I think that we all showed up to play a game, and sometimes we have to just kind of break immersion a little bit so that the game can start. So the Boar Woods, so named because it is inhabited by giant boars, again ripped off of Matt Colville. A giant boar team attacks the party in the night, and they have to basically fend them off. They end up getting to the temple where they save the girl. Just like Matt Colville's thing, they find the little backroom secret thing, but this is where I diverge from Matt Colville. Our paladin in the group, Roland, who is played by a guy named Sam, he discovers the main tomb is the sarcophagus of the leader of the Order of the Silver Dragon. Now, when he grabs the sword from the leader of the Order, so he pledges himself at the altar, walks in there, and the sword is presented to him. This is because he has inherited that order. He is now the leader of that order by rights. So now he's the leader of this order that has obviously died out. He's the only one there, but the potential is there for him to kind of grow that if he'd like to. We move down. They finish their mission. It goes it's a shit show. They end up getting trapped with goblins coming. They go in with a horde of goblins chasing them, and then there's goblins inside and goblins outside. The goblins are pushing inside, and one of our characters just teleports and runs off. He gives up. He's out of there. He just quits, which is hilarious and also awful and sad. Bad Alex. Typhon is his character. He runs away. They do manage to survive the encounter with no deaths, though one of them ends up buried in a pile of bodies and he doesn't show up till a game later. They go back home to Hamlet, where I had kind of planned on a little adventure for them. Much like Matt Colville's little thing, I had kind of planned on them doing this little like starter meet each other mission, and then doing like a Village of Hamlet kind of quest type thing. Unfortunately for them, once they get to the blacksmith, who I played as a little bit of a chintzy guy, refuses to pay them very much. He gives them like 5 silver, which I think is pretty good. I think he may have promised more, but then he didn't give it to him, and so they murder him. It didn't play out exactly as I describe it, but pretty much one of them tried to rob him. They both rolled natural ones. The person trying to rob him rolled a natural 1, and I rolled a natural 1 for him trying to avoid them. So we decided that there was like a little bit of a scuffle, slap fight type situation. And it ended up where our Typhon character, the guy who ran off earlier, he's kind of a toxic player, he ran off. No, he didn't run off. He Mind Blasted, which is a spell Mystics can do. Don't ever play Mystic. Mystic's a bad class. No, it's not okay. If you're a DM and they bring up Mystic, you just shoot that down right away. He murders the blacksmith because he's not sure what's going on. He doesn't know his power, so he casts this spell, does damage to this commoner who has like 2 hit points, does like 10 damage to him. He dies right away. Now they've committed a murder in Hamlet, so obviously the missions, my quest that I had planned, that's gone. There's no way that's happening. So the party kind of splits up more or less, and some of them go south to Evertide to inform on the murder that has happened. I'll spare you the details, but that's what happens. And then one after another, I'll explain. This is a little it's hard to accept why this all happens the way it does, but other than it feels to you, the player, or to you, the viewer, that it's the DM pushing them to all be together at the same time, but that's kind of a plot I'm going for. It's kind of something I'm angling for, but I don't want to give too much away on that. So everyone eventually ends up in Deergrave all at about the same time. They all hang out for a little while, realize that some of them are wanted men, obviously, because they left the blacksmith. Oh, the blacksmith's daughter was standing right next to them when they murdered her father, who she ran off to the guards to inform, obviously. It's really not good. But news is kind of starting to spread out in like a radius that there is a murderer somewhere around here, and the general description is fish person. Now, he's Typhon is how do I get this? Typhon is a Triton. Yeah, so fairly recognizable. So they obviously have to kind of leave the general area and the neighboring villages. So they start heading down here towards Water's Edge. It says Waterford. That's because I mixed Daggerford and Water something. I forget. It's something in Faerun. They end up heading that way. They get something stolen from them and find out that the Crows, which is an assassin's guild, they find out later, stole something from them and they need to get it back. So they chase after this guy. It doesn't work out. They think that he stole something from Typhon. It's this magical gemstone he's had for a long time. It used to belong to someone in Typhon's backstory. Typhon's convinced it's something important. Hint, hint, it is. They chase after this guy. They end up losing him by just a tiny bit. They almost got him. But he ends up fleeing this way, so the party naturally agrees that it's probably he's headed to Water's Edge. So they head eastward towards Water's Edge. There's a random encounter that happens, but they make it there mostly unscathed. Upon arrival, they find that smoke is rising out of the slum area of the district. Water's Edge is quite large. It's maybe 100,000 people or something. Very, very large, sprawling city. Cloudspire Castle, being its government, is held in a different part of the actual city. It's separate. So this actually, even though it shows like it's different a place, it actually is up in the mountains, and this is like at the edge of the mountains. To draw that for you, Water's Edge is at the edge of the mountain, and a river kind of runs through it. And the spire, Cloudspire Castle, is up in the mountains up here somewhere. I am limited by drawing. But they find that smoke is rising out of that district, and they obviously go to investigate. They find a very large man, 12-foot tall, half-giant, named Captain Amber. His real name is Amber Feneliak. I just came up with the most ridiculous name I could. He's actually a really nice, gentle guy, despite being huge and evil. Not evil. Pump the brakes. He's not evil. He's a really good guy. He just seems like scary, given his size and natural demeanor. But he turns out to be really nice. He gives the party some leeway to investigate the area. They find that the crows, who stole that gemstone to start with, had their headquarters in the city. The Watch knows about it. They just don't do anything about it because they don't want to get their own men killed to deal with this scum, and they are in the slums where they're doing pretty much. They don't. The crows naturally avoided going for targets that would get them too much attention. But you find that the crows have been attacked. They've been decimated by something. Reports come in that it's somebody that was a human size, like a normal humanoid size, and then grew to the size of a giant and smashed the thing and threw fire everywhere. Reports are varied. Obviously, it's commoners that don't really know what's going on. That happens, and so they find that it was the crows, and that the crows left a note for them to escape down here to Blackpool, that they would meet there. Blackpool is basically Tortuga from Pirates of the Caribbean, to give you a quick description. It's a little more interesting than that. So the path so far is, we're in Hamlet, we head down to Evertide, some of them went into the woods. Basically, no matter what, they ended up in Deergrave, headed from Deergrave down here to Water's Edge, faffed around for a little while. Then they ended up heading south. They head all the way south. I think they travel by river, so it's a little faster. But they get a boat. They head south. Captain Amber asks them to investigate the crows, but not to engage them, and to figure out like what happened, why it happened, how he can prevent this kind of thing in the future. They pass through Midhill. I don't think they even really talk about it at all. They end up getting all the way down here to the Temple of Bahamut, which is like a priest village kind of thing. It's a large stone-carved temple into the side of the mountain, and a village is kind of around it. Not many people there, just, priests and some guards and, the general farming and stuff. This area, this is a huge kind of plains area. There's not a lot there, but it is okay for farming. Orcs run in packs all around this area. All around this area, there's a lot of orc activity in the mountains and in these plains. They don't know that at the time, but they find out quick. So they head down here, the Temple of Bahamut. They do some stuff. They make the temple mad because one of them has this disgusting hat they picked up from the goblins that they kept all this time. And in the holy water, like the holy water in the center, when you walk in, you do your little whatever it is you do. And he takes the disgusting hat, and he asks me, is the water clean? Would you say it's purified and clean? I said, yes, of course. I have no idea what he's about to do at this point. And he's like, okay, I dunked the hat in the water and clean it off. Didn't expect that. It works, obviously. It's holy water. I feel like it makes it, radiantly clean. But the priests are unhappy because he just wasted, a lot of holy water. They pay a fine and leave. Then they head this way to Blackpool. On the way, they find a merchant caravan has been ambushed by orcs and a manticore, which they find out in a moment later. Everyone is dead except for 2 guards and a little girl who is traveling with her family, who is a prominent merchant class person. They find that this This girl has a ton of money on her and titles. They agree to kind of help her get to Blackpool. It mostly goes unscathed. They find that they go past a place called the Rose Garden, which is somewhere in the center of Blackpool Forest. They decide not to go into it. Unfortunately, I was kind of hoping they would, but they didn't. They make it to Blackpool mostly unscathed and find out that Blackpool is actually run by a group called the Kindred, which is a vampire group. They're mostly held up by pretty strict laws, so that it's not like vampires own the city, but it is a little darker there. A vampire named Ulrich runs the whole city, runs the whole town. Him and his little vampire cohorts pretty much enforce the law, and it's mostly like a skin grad type deal where they're not like actively harming the public, and harming the public will get you a pretty swift and gruesome death, but they're still vampires. So the party is approached by this man who, I got this from the internet, and man, I wish I could give props to the person who got this for me, but it worked really well for the story I was trying to tell. This old man runs up to them and is like, "Hey, I know you can help me. You're there to help me. He's this raving lunatic runs up to runs up to the party, and is like, I know you can help me." And he takes them to his house, which is this dilapidated piece of shit building somewhere in the nobility district. Like, it's this old rundown building in the nobility district, and he gets them inside, and they find this tapestry that kind of depicts like an old version of the home, maybe a plot, and they end up getting pulled into the past, and they end up having different kinds of combat and skill checks and talks throughout the history of this guy's family, that end up leading to his dad being alive still. He's not fucked up and weird. The family's rich and well known, and the vampires are gone because, well, they're not gone. The vampires have 50-50 share in the city, because the dude was a big proponent of Pelor, and though they can't push them out entirely, because it would be quite difficult for them, it ends up being like a 50-50, like light and dark sort of government type thing, where Ulrich's daughter and the noble's son end up having a marriage so that the houses are joined, and then they are the rulers of the city, so that they have kind of joint control, which is a really interesting sort of effect the party had, and the party could have had any effect on that. So they kind of changed the geopolitical effect on Blackpool. But they find out that the Crows also were in Blackpool, where their main base was. That base is gone. It's cleared out. It looks like the Crows packed up in a hurry and then ran. They find some cool magic items, I think some potions, and then they set off on a ship to go find them, and they sail that way. And they are tracing them down because I believe they think they are headed to, if I can pull up the Bone Sea here, headed to, yes, Gillimore. Gillimore. Come on. Right here. Gillimore is like a worse version of Tortuga. It's like a pirate fortress type thing. One of the kings of the pirates owns this fortress and kind of like pirates the whole area for money and power and wealth and booze and women and all that sort of stuff. He's a great guy. I'd love for you to meet him. We'll get to what this is later. Actually, we'll get to that now. On the way to the Gillimore, which they're actually up here. That's not looking good. They are up here. Yeah. So this kind of has like a this sort of motion. They started up here, and the coast kind of goes like that, and then they're somewhere over here in the middle area. This is the middle area. So this spine is in between the Gold Peninsula and the Northern Highlands. So they head down. They end up, because of some weird magical effects that this place, the Spire, which I ripped the name off of Fable, but it's nothing like Fable. The Spire is putting out some kind of weird stuff all over the sea, all over the Bone Sea, that's fudging everything up. Navigational stuff is weird around the Bone Sea. They end up heading from above it, end up going past the Spire, almost like something is dragging them there. Almost something like something wants them to be there. They end up seeing the Spire. They see this massive dragon that looks like a galaxy. It's like a void. It's called a void dragon. You can look it up. It's in the mods. It's not in the Monster Manual. It's in a Tome of Beasts, I think. But it's my own version of it. They see this thing, and before it can get them, they are chasing the crows. They chase the crows into here and see the spire, which is this like shattered, broken thing, this huge magical anomaly that's kind of gated by this huge fog wall that kind of barricades it from the outside world. Somehow they get in. It has something to do with Typhon's crystal, because the crows still had that Typhon's crystal, which is what they've been trying to take all along. And we're trying to figure out why they wanted that, what they were going to do with it. But they take the crystal and do something with it, and it opens up a little portal, a little hole in the fog wall that they both sail through before it closes. Oh. Whew. They get through the fog wall, combat ensues, ship-to-ship combat, and they both pretty much go down. They avoid the Void Dragon narrowly. They do something with that crystal, and they both end up... They all end up here. Let me see if I can fit this page. Oh, my goodness. That's... Okay. Maybe a little less stuff. There we go. Ah, yes. So the party ends up washed up on a beach right here in the Acadian Islands. They find that... they explore this place a little bit. The Roland guy finds a shrine to Bahamut. And since the Order of the Silver Dragon, he decides to pledge himself to Bahamut there, which is cool. A cool narrative thing. So he's now devoted to Bahamut instead of, I forget what he was. The party is then, I think the word is screwed. The party builds a raft, I think. Is it a raft? No. Their ship kind of wrecks up with them, and they're able to build a little ship and kind of sail this way. And they end up kind of heading to Harper's Point. On the way there, a ship full of Minotaurs pass them by on the way to harvest all the ship stuff. Because Minotaurs, for me, are shipfaring folk. They're good at, the navigational stuff, but they're shipfaring folk. They're excellent sailors. So they head this way and end up robbing the Minotaurs of a sea chart, this map of the area, which tells them where everything is. After that, they head down and make this little gap. I think they sail around, and they end up heading to this place called Pike. Pike is like the major political power of these islands. And in Pike, they learn that they are walled off from the rest of the world. There's a massive fog wall that stops anyone from leaving. In actual fact, what happens if you try to leave is these focusing towers, which are here, here, and here, create this little barrier that's run from here, Acadia, and then a little mage tower right there in the middle. These focusing towers, if you sail by it, what they do is they create a localized control weather spell that makes like the roughest waters they can possibly churn out. If that doesn't work, they make a hurricane and sink your ship and put you back on the islands or kill you. So no one can leave, and it's been like this for 5 years. I think it's been 5 years. They find out that the ones that are keeping them here are these guys, the mages. There are some kind of crazy mages that are up here in this tower, and this is all part of some kind of like experiment they're doing. The magic of the focusing towers when you enter them puts you either on this island or this island. This is Angler Island. I forget what this one is. I'm sure it's written somewhere. This is where bad people go, people of evil alignment, and this is where people of good alignment go. Neutral alignment, I think, also goes over here. But the experiment is, if you keep people trapped up long enough, see if they will eventually work together, is the line that they feed them. Stuff happens, and it never really works out. Attempts are made for each of them to work together, but it always seems to be met with one side betraying the other. They end up eventually finding out that it was actually the mages that were making that happen, or I'm not sure. The question would be, why were they doing that? But you'll see. They end up traveling, I believe. They travel by boat over this way, past there, to Hickory, to help with a little shipping job that one of the fellows has. They end up staying the night. Everything's fine. They're learning a little bit about what's going on, and they end up heading back. And on the way, I forget exactly how the chain of events happens, but they eventually end up in here, because the necromancer who had Typhon's gem is here, and there they find that he's raising some kind of army of the undead from the burial cairns here to attack Acadia to let them get out of here. A noble cause, but Typhon, being Typhon, attacks him, even though he kind of offered to help. Typhon is mad that he took his rock, so Typhon attacks this man and tries to kill him. They succeed in killing him and get some really evil items, some other cool stuff. They head this way, and in there they find, somewhere in this forest, I think right around here, they find their first dungeon crawl, which is I think the Dragon Foundry or something like that. It's a place where guns were made back in the day, and they, over time, a little bit, find out that the Order of the Silver Dragon's job, their whole mission of the Order, the secret mission of the Order, was to basically expunge all knowledge that these firearms were ever existed, ever created, destroy every bit of them they can. And they do a really good job of that, because no one's heard of them forever. I mean, they're pretty much gone from history. So they did a great job, all under the guise of going after, like, the Dragonborn, which had taken over this island many years before then. They're just kind of all figuring this stuff out as we go. So our player gets a gun, they finish this foundry, they head this way, back up to Pike, and once they get there, they get a message, I believe, from the leader of the pirates here at Providence, and you can see that he's kind of got all these folks working together, all these evil groups working together, in order to do something. They get an invitation to come, they do so, they head to Tolsidir, and they find that it's open to them. I won't get into the political landscape of Tolsidir, but it's not good. It's not good for any of the common folk that live there. They get a free pass and head to Providence. In Providence, they find that there's a ziggurat. At the bottom of the ziggurat, there's a door that no one can open. There's burn marks, scratch marks, but no one can seem to get through it. And there's Raymond Blackwell, who's the leader of the pirates here. He's actually one of the other kings of the pirates that kind of got stuck here. He takes over this area, and he wants someone to let him in this place in the bottom of the ziggurat. He's convinced that since magic is pretty scarce in this time in my game, he's convinced that whatever's in there is going to help everyone escape, and that's what he wants. So he employs the party to figure out how to get through this door. The party does get through this door. It turns out that the gun is actually the gun they find there. If you slot it in and turn it, it's a lock. It's a key to the door. It opens up. They end up releasing a demon that was trapped there. She describes herself as an archdemon, but, who can say for sure? They release her. Two of them end up signing. Two of the players. She offers contracts to all the players, and empowers the gun that was handed there for freeing her. And she takes over Providence, and she offers the players contract. Two of the players sign contracts with the demon. Terrible idea. They end up leaving. They find that Roland, who stayed here in Tolsidir because he wasn't here, has been captured by the mages and is now in Acadia. They go over to Acadia and find that the mages are pretty displeased that they've released this demon, and basically the mages explain that they ruined the whole experiment, and now they have to go and help. So they go this way, they go back, attack Tolsidir, destroy that, they get through that, big combat ensues. Then they go to Providence, they beat Maya, the Soul Keeper, which is the name of the demon, and they pretty much re-imprison her, which is great. Then, after that, the mage here pretty much turns off the tower and goes back home to the capital of the city, bummed that his experiment had to end. We head back to, I believe, the Highlands, right? Anyway, we're looking at 30 minutes now, so we'll end here. But that's pretty much what has happened so far. So we went from the Northern Highlands. We explored kind of just the westernmost coast mostly, and then we headed over to the Acadian Islands, and then we're on a ship back to wherever it is we come from. I believe they headed back to waters. Yes. They end up heading and docking in Evertide, which is one of our players' home. Actually, their family runs this place. We'll pick that up in a minute. We'll get that to the next episode. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later.